Welcome back to our broadcast. This is actually, I'm going to talk today about headlines, which I alluded to that I was going to do a series on headlines. And we're going to start out with a topic that I did some teaching on a long time ago. And when I did, I got flooded with people wanting to talk to me about crypto. And without going too much into that, it was a real eye-opener and lesson. And so I want to talk about this today as a headline and from the perspective of trying to find out what is moving in our society. Okay, what is moving in the headlines? So we're not necessarily going to do a lesson on economics or a lesson on crypto management or that kind of thing. We're going to talk about why now people are flooding to crypto. They're flooding to gold. And in fact, I heard a news report that Costco now sells $100 million a quarter in gold. So Costco, basically a big superstore, grocery store, and like Myers or whatever, they're selling gold. Why? Because people want to buy gold. People want to buy crypto. So we're going to look at that in terms of what's going on here. What's going on in the spiritual world that's moving people to buy gold and to buy cryptocurrencies. Now, while I don't want this to be necessarily a teaching lesson, we do have to start with some principles, okay? The last broadcast I did to introduce this series, we talked about it's about building a kingdom, because that's really what is going on here. Everything you see, someone's trying to build a kingdom. And I'll tell you who that someone is not Jesus Christ. He's not trying to build a kingdom. They came to him and they said, we have no God but Caesar. We have no king but Caesar, because he was accused of what? Becoming a king, trying to build a kingdom. And when he told Pontius Pilate, he said, my kingdom's not of this world. If my kingdom was of this world, then my soldiers would be here fighting, but they're not here fighting. So he made a very clean distinction between his kingdom, which will be someday come to earth, but in this period of time, he's not building a kingdom. And this is one of the troubling things when you start to look at most religions. They're building kingdoms. They're building kingdoms because the person who doesn't have a kingdom, who needs to build one, is Satan or Lucifer. Because we talked about this. As the second son, God gave man the kingdom to rule. That's what he did in the garden. Well, when man took on the arum, or took on the nature of the serpent, which we can go to in some other teaching, what happened is he gave the kingdom by opening up his mind, which we talked about light. Remember the last time we talked? By opening up his mind and being the arbitrator of what he should do, good and evil, is this the right thing to do? He opened the door for Lucifer or Satan to take over his kingdom. And that's what Lucifer is doing. He's building a kingdom. He's trying to build a kingdom. And the only way he can do it is through the agency of man, because men have the physical presence here on the earth. So to build anything, since he's spirit, he needs men, or he needs physical things to happen here. So that's what's going on here. It's a battle for the heart and mind of man to build the kingdom. And see, when I talked a little bit the last time, I said, see, God isn't really interested in building a kingdom. In fact, the scripture tells us we are sojourners in this land. This isn't our kingdom. We're just passing through. We're passing through. And in the time we're passing through, we get to know the Father, we get to know the Lord better and the things we do. And He uses us as little lamps, Jesus being the light, to show the light or the truth of who God is to our people here on earth. And that's what God's concerned about. He's not concerned about building anything. He already has a kingdom. And one day that kingdom will come and be the kingdom of this world. So, one of the principles of building a kingdom is you need resources. Man's the resource. So what do you need to do? You need to use the man. You need to be in a relationship with the man to have anything done here on the physical earth. Okay, so it's a relational kind of thing. Now we're going to get into that, and let's look at crypto. Why are people flooding to crypto? Why are people buying gold? Well, they have fear. What are they afraid of? You know, if they know God and His love, perfect love casts out all fear. But there's this spirit of fear, and it is a spirit. It's every time you feel some emotion, you got to ask yourself, what's that breath? So why are people buying crypto? Because they're afraid. That's the basic thing that's happening. The fear. So what are they afraid of? Well, what they're seeing is the banking system's imploding. Okay, money is becoming worthless, and so what they had used to exchange things, because this is the problem with mankind since he's been put out of the garden. He's no longer sustained by the garden, by God. He has to work for his daily bread by the sweat of his brows. Well, how does he do that? Well, he has to form relationships with other people to have that happen. I've talked about it before, but it's a good example. It's real simple. I own an apple orchard, okay? It's producing way more apples than I could possibly eat. But I see people out there who need apples. So what do? Well, I make a deal with Joe, say, for example, and say, Joe, will you help me pick these apples? If you do, then I'll give you some of the apples. Well, I don't need that many apples either. I said, but other people do, and maybe you can give some apples to Bob down the street, and he's got some chickens. He might give you an egg. That's a barter economy. That's an economy where people come together relationally in an effort to both be better off than they were before the deal or the contract. Okay, that's the basis of a relational economy. I've got here, economies are always exchanges. You have something, I have something, we make an exchange. And they can be, just about anything can be exchanged. Drugs, sex, what you need to get by, live. And, a lot of times, I can remember my grandma telling me a long time ago, she was born into a big family, and because she was a little bit older, she was supposed to take care of all of her brothers and sisters, the younger ones, and do the housework and stuff, because back then it was a lot harder to clean a house and make meals than it is now. Now people go fast food, they do this, but to take care of a house was a lot of work, it took a lot of time. And so what would happen is the mother would make the daughters do some of this while the sons went out and worked in the fields or whatever they did. And because it was all about being together, everybody pulling what weight they could to produce enough to keep things going at home. So she she went in, was in this family, and she didn't really like it that much. Okay. So what she did is she met my grandpa, and he was like 11 years older than her. You know, today, what they did would have been considered child abuse. I mean, it would have been a big deal. Back then, it wasn't a big deal. But she was 15, and he was 20, so he was 26 years old. He had went to junior college, I think. He ended up becoming a teacher, a part-time teacher in school before you needed a full-blown teacher's license and all of that. And so why would tell you, I married him to get out of the house. You know, the exchange is, yeah, I'll be your wife. You know, I'll do the wifely things. But in exchange for you getting me out of this house where I'm a slave. Okay. And that was the exchange. And that was the basis of their relationship initially. It's like, okay, she's pretty nice looking, you know, he was short like me. I don't know how many women were available, but he looked at her and he said, okay, I really want her as a wife. You know, we can bring love into it and all of that. Maybe it was. Maybe a lot of times back in their day, the marriages were for economic reasons. They weren't so much because of love and all of these emotions. They were how you survived. You made contracts. You entered relationships. And that's what her basis of marrying him was about. Okay, so she gave herself to him. He took care of her, got her out of the house. Okay, so economies are always this kind of exchange. So the question we've been talking about, what is the basis of exchange? Okay, now here's where we get into some spirits who initially, when they left the garden and they started having sons and daughters and the population started multiplying fairly quickly, what happened is you needed a basis of exchange. And the basis of exchange was, I'll do something for you, you do something for me. You give me something, I'll give you something. It was a relational, it wasn't exploitive. Could be exploitive, but it was not exploitive. It was initially free will, you know, we enter into it, and we basically, the exchanges were somewhat simple, so it wasn't like you could be hoodwinked a lot. You know, how much intelligence you have to have. You're hungry, you need some apples, and this guy says, pick some apples and I'll give you some apples. I mean, that's the basis of a very simple economy, because as it becomes relational, eye on eye, you know, face to face, things are pretty simple. And initially, the technologies were pretty simple. Well, all of that changed when we read it's in the book of Enoch, but it's mentioned elsewhere in the Bible and other writings around the time. But we know that these angels came down and they decided to go in and have relations with the daughters of men to produce the Nephilim, their own seed. See, God said, man, you're my son. I'm going to be in this relationship with you, and you're going to be in relationship with Eve, and that's going to show how I am. That's the basis of who I am. I'm expansive in this way. You'll multiply, and there'll be this relational kind of thing. Well, these angels come down and say, well, we're going to screw this up because we're going to build a kingdom here. We're not going to let man show the image of God moving across the earth and expanding the earth. We're going to contract the earth. We're going to come down and we're going to interfere with this. And we're going to use man to build our kingdom. So when they come down, they change things. And they actually change it by introducing the idea of precious metals, gold, which initially Azazel is the angel that showed showed man how to mine precious metals, basically. And what happened is the precious metals were fashioned into jewelry that women wore along with makeup and that. It made them very seductive. And so that's how Azazel, he introduced it for that. But they started to see that, you were more likely to find a wife if you could give her gold and you could give her this. So let's see how the basis of the exchange is this for that, and it starts to change as gold's entered into the idea. And gold's a really weird thing to value in many ways. It's kind of a weird thing. They say it has an intrinsic value. Its value is in man's desire for it, because pretty much it's as a metal, it's not very strong. It's fairly soft metal, and you can't make plows into it or anything like that. It's pretty much limited to some industrial uses, but not that much. Silver's got way more of an industrial use. But so gold, it's the desire that creates the demand for it. So, okay, so we go through this exchange, and these angels, what they do is they say to man, we're going to make your life better. But all you have to do for us to give you these technologies and things, because it's much more than just the metals, for you to get by and build a better life for yourself, we're going to demand that you pay taxes. You worship us. And that's where the sacrifice came in. The sacrifice was both blood because of Baal. They wanted the children killed and destroy man. But they wanted to put man in a state where he was dependent upon the gods, okay, these beings above them. And it set up now an exploitive rather than a relational exchange. And money came into it. Money comes a little bit later. But you need us, the angels, you need the government more than we need you. See, that's the deception. That's the lie. Because the angels really can't build a kingdom unless they hoodwink you into doing it for them. So, but because they're powerful and they're above, it's just like a person with lots of gold, lots of money. Everybody, oh, this person must be really special or something because look, oh, they got all this money. Well, that's not necessarily true, but that's the lure. So what we go from this economy that's relational to one that's exploitive using a monetary system or a money system. And just real quick, we start with gold. In fact, 100 years ago, if you were going to, if you got some money in your hands that the government minted, they would be Federal Reserve notes, or they'd actually be coins of precious metals. So they had this value to them based upon man's desire for gold. So they had a value, or they had there was basis of them. Well, then we move into paper money. In paper money, and this is where we're going to get into what's happening here today. Okay, paper money had initially, for people to accept it, you had to be able to, it was a gold or silver certificate that allowed you to take that piece of paper in and go to any bank and get the equivalent of the paper in gold and silver. Because otherwise people wouldn't use it. Paper is worthless. It doesn't have any intrinsic value. It doesn't have any, the desire for the money is based upon its utility in trade. Okay, so if inflation goes up out of the sky, then it loses its value, and it has, you can't buy anything with it. Look at what's happening in the inflation today. You went into the store maybe a year ago, and you could have bought a bag of chips for $2. Now they're $5 or $4. Well, did the chips change? No. What changed is the value of the money. So the value of the paper money, which is actually a fiat thing, it's even worse than that, because in our present banking system, our government doesn't mint money or silver certificates or gold certificates. It mints notes that we owe to the bankers. So when we borrow money, there's interest on it. And that interest accumulates over time, and the value of the money goes down. So the people who came up with this fiat system, this central bank, actually go back to Babylon and the Babylon money system. That's where they go back, to try to get you to believe that they have the power and they're going to take care of you in exchange for you working for them. It's exploitive. It's no longer relational. They don't really care about you. And we see that today with the government, letting people stream across the border. You even have Democrat cities, not to get into the politics of it, who the guy in charge now, supposedly Biden, he's opened up the borders. So you got all these people streaming in across the border, and they're all going to these blue state cities like Chicago and that. And the mayor in Chicago just came out and said, we really screwed up here. Democrats screwed up. We let in all of these people. We don't have the resources to feed them. And what do you see? You see them taking the resources, the taxes people paid, and they're giving them to somebody who wasn't a citizen here, okay? And people are getting pretty angry about this. And the government's doing that. Why? Because the government really has an agenda. And the agenda isn't in your best interest. The agenda is to create a world government where they are at the top, this green thing like, oh, we're going to tax you for breathing. The WEFers, or the World Economic Forum, saying, when you breathe out carbon dioxide. You breathe out something that's poisonous, that's going up in the atmosphere. So we got to tax your breathing. I'm not making this up. Look it up. That's where they're going. Well, why are they doing that? Because they're convinced that we're going to use all of their resources, and they're convinced that there's too many of us to control, to exploit. In fact, as the population increases and their ability to control it through the monetary system, which is definitely happening, when they lose that ability, then they can't exploit. And the entities behind this that have convinced all of these politicians is that, oh, we're going to help you. Well, Ronald Reagan said this. He says, when you hear I'm from the government and I'm here to help you, you better ask yourself. But see, we've made ourselves dependent upon the government. We have. And the government is more or less the entities behind the government have orchestrated this slowly over time by saying, just like what Jacob did to Esau. Esau comes in from a hunt, and he's hungry. He's dying of hunger. And he can't make stew. He's never made stew. He does the hunting, and that kind of thing. So here, Jacob's got this pot of stew, on the fire. And Esau says, give me a bowl of that stew. And he goes, for a price? See, you're dying of hunger. You're saying you're about ready to die of hunger. Well, I've got stew. See, I now have the power over you to exploit you. Jacob was a deceiver. So what did he do? He said, I'll give you this. All you have to do is give me your birthright. Well, here's Esau. Well, what good is all of this going to do me if I die of hunger? So he makes this deal with him. This is what the government has been doing in these people who are at the top. Because originally, when the exchanges happened, they were lateral. There wasn't a hierarchy. That came when the fallen angels came, because they set up this hierarchy. Before that was a relational exchange. Now, because they introduce desire, money, not just to meet your needs, not just to put clothes on your back, a roof over your head, and something in your belly, where you had to work with other people and you had to make sure you didn't want the guy who were dependent upon to pick the apples to die. You may get him to work a little harder, maybe he should have, but you don't want him to die. Well, as you get up in this hierarchy thing, you don't really care if there's enough people to do the work, whether you kill people or not. In fact, when there's in the book of one of the ancient writings, it talks about when they were building the tower and a man died, they just move him aside. But if one of the bricks that was building the tower fell to the ground, broke, there was mourning. Everything stopped because the brick was worth more than the man, because the brick was what you were building the tower out of. And we had plenty of men to come in. We could get them to come in there, because if they didn't, we wouldn't feed them. Again, exploitive. So this is the basis of the thing. So now, the people at the top who created this economic system are in a world of hurt, because normally we don't see inflation, or there's an excuse for the inflation, a war, something like that. Well, now they're being exposed and people are realizing the money's losing value. How am I going to survive? Fear. I need something. And maybe, and because right now America's been so blessed economically that we really don't understand the difference between need and desire. I need food, but I don't need prime rib every night. Okay, I need clothes, but I don't need finery. All the clothes. I need certain things like this, but through this process, we've come to the place where our desires and our needs aren't sorted out. So we start to think about, well, man, if I can't do this, if I can't go on vacation, if I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm going to die. So you're like Esau. Oh, I'm going to die. So you're fearful. So you're susceptible to exploitation. So that this economic system is dying. It's dying. It will collapse. There's two groups that are going to collapse it. And they're both collapsing it for a different reason. And so this is what's happening. So what are people doing? Well, they're trying, because the fear is in them that if they can't preserve their wealth, they can't meet their desires or needs, so they're looking for a haven to put what little money or whatever they have in. So they're being being led into these avenues. And I'm not saying don't invest in crypto, don't invest in gold. I'm not saying that. But I'm telling you, know the spirit behind it. Because if you are panicked, like, what am I going to do? That's fear. And there's always somebody that's going to come on the scene and say, oh, you're afraid. Let me show you the safe way. It started with the angels coming down. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make your life better. And then in the end, what happens? You go from a relational understanding to an exchange to an exploitive exchange. And when that happens, you're no longer free. You're a servant to your desires as manipulated by these voices. And this is where this is all going. So crypto, what is crypto? Well, crypto is a digital currency that's not controlled by the central bank. Central bank kind of can control gold prices through the market manipulations. They're trying to do that with crypto. So a lot of people are trying to, because they're afraid and they want to make sure they can fulfill all of their desires. That's why the love of money is the root of all evil, because your desires are not necessarily good and wholesome. You have needs, but those needs balloon into desires, and money becomes the basis for the fulfillment of your desires, where you can leave this relational economy and get into the exploitive economy. I'll own the business someday, and then these little peons will work hard. I'm not going to give them everything that my dad did, for example, if it's a family business. I'm going to make them work for every dime I give them, And so you get into these places where people get puffed up because they have the money, they have the power, and they think because they have the money and the power that that's the providence of the spirits or whatever on them, and that leads to this exploitation. So crypto is emerging right now as an independent currency or system of exchange. But here's the problem with crypto. What's the hard assets behind crypto? It's still a digital currency. See, the central bank or the world bankers and the Federal Reserve, they want to move us into a digital currency. Amazing as it is, they're against crypto, but they want to put in a digital currency they control. See, right now, crypto isn't so much controlled the way the dollar is or the way the gold supply is. So people are moving into crypto, again, because they're being motivated by the spirit of fear. I've got to find some place to put my wealth so I can meet my needs, which include my desires, maybe to be the richest person on the block where I don't have to put up with anybody. I can just buy people left and right. And that's what the government does. It buys people left and right. It bought my generation with Social Security. It's buying the young people's generation. Look at what Biden, I'll get rid of the student debt. Well, I don't know how I'm going to pay this debt. I'm afraid I'll never make enough money to live because I've got this debt. Well, along comes a person like Biden saying, I'm your huckleberry. I can take care of this for you. All you have to do is vote for me and go along with all of my plans, because I'm kind-hearted, not like the bastard Trump or whatever. I'm kind-hearted. See, and I'll take care of you. This is the basis of the manipulation and control. So what you want to do when you see a headline like Costco selling gold, the crypto going up, like Bitcoin's now, I think it's trading at 44,000. Just a month or so ago, it was trading at like 26,000. So 44, see, it's went up $18,000 in about 8 weeks. Pretty amazing. But it was high at one time. It was $67,000, and now, and then it had a low, I think, around 16,000. So see, it fluctuates because again, when people want to buy something, the price goes up. So this is the world we're in, and so when you see these headlines, what you want to stop back and say, okay, what am I sensing or feeling here? Like if you see a thing on crypto going up and you think, oh, I missed it. Oh, my dollar's becoming worthless. I need to find out what to do. See how your thoughts and feelings and fears are trying to orchestrate what you think and do. That's what it means to discern the spirits, to take every thought captive. Is you got to find out in the headlines and in yourself, what is blowing through me? What wind is going through me? And that's part of why we're going to do the headline thing. We're going to look at some of these things and say, okay, so what's the spirit? There's a spirit of Antichrist, who is the counterfeit of Jesus, who, unlike Jesus said, I'm going back and I'll return and I'll establish my kingdom, the counterfeit spirit is saying, I'm going to establish the kingdom here. And just as Jesus said, your heavenly Father knows your needs, didn't say your desires, and he meets your needs, that counterfeit says, I'm going to give you the desires, because he can manipulate desires more than he can need. He can get you thinking you need something you don't. He can get you to desire basically a metal that has very little utility in industry. Which we're going to find out is much more plentiful than we know. And when that comes out, the price of gold is going to go down. It's going to go up because of the fear, and people are buying it and raising the price. Same way with crypto. But when they actually find out how much gold there is actually in their hills, because that's been manipulated, the value of gold will go down. The cost of gold will go down. That's why when you see pictures of heaven, you see in heaven the streets are paved with gold. What that tells you is that what man values and desires, God doesn't necessarily think that big of a deal. And a lot of things that cause us anxiety and fear and cause us to move and do things are things God's really not all that concerned about. He just wants you to trust him. He'll give you your daily bread. How's he going to do that? I don't know, but he says he will. He'll meet your needs. So that's what we see going here. So to end, just, keep aware of that. Look at these headlines. When somebody says they're going to do something for your good, try to discern their motivations for doing this. What are they wanting? What do they desire? Is it to control me? Is it get me to shell out money? To build a big building? To help the poor? What is it? See, there's always a spirit behind everything that happens, we do, and we say. And our role is, our duty through the Holy Spirit is to discern those things. Okay. Again, I pray that our eyes all be open to the spiritual world that we see from above, so we can see the enemy and address the enemy and overcome in this world. So, until the next time, shalom, and have a great day.